What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over the Hellfire Gala event. Now, this was an event that Marvel did as a way to kind of basically say that mutants are tired of being messed with. They're tired of being looked at as like a secondary race, a race that no one should care for. And so basically, the Hellfire Gala event is a way for mutants to show humans what they were actually able to accomplish when humans leave mutants alone and mutants are able to actually work together. All that right there is very huge. Now, the Hellfire Gala event was put together by Emma Frost for those reasons. On top of that, her other reason is that she still wants mutants and humans to work together, to be a united force. And of course, that goes all the way back to what Charles Xavier has been trying to do ever since he made the X-Men. It's just now the way to get there is a tad bit different. Now, with all that being said though, of course, the Hellfire Gala event is using all the different X-Men titles. So like Hellions, X-Force, X-Factor, X-Men, all the different titles. But of course, each book is used as a way to kind of say, we're going to focus on these characters and see how this event actually affect those characters. So for example, our last video focused on X-Force, and they were basically a security team for the Hellfire Gala event, and they had to deal with a lot of different things. And so that's why I say each book is a tad bit different. And that's why I kind of like this entire crossover. Now, with all that being said though, of course, now we pick up with the Hellions. Now, to me personally, the Hellions are a great team. I love this team a lot. Like, if I could rank all the different teams we had at this point in Marvel Comics, Hellions would probably be on top. Now, with all that being said, this book is more of kind of like, what would happen if a group of mutants were not able to actually attend this event? Because even though the Hellfire Gala event is being run by the mutants, not all mutants were invited. Not all humans were invited. Only key mutants and key humans were invited to this event. And so, of course, when it comes to the Hellions, only a select few were actually offered the chance to come to this event. Some others were not. And so that is what Hellions number 12 is all about. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, when it comes to the Hellfire Gala event, basically only a few select mutants were invited, like I said earlier. And so when it comes to the Hellions, only 3 characters were invited. One, Mr. Sinister. Now, of course, this makes sense because he's part of the Quiet Council. And remember, the Quiet Council is basically kind of like the government system of COPPA, that they come together to make big time decisions on different topics. Now, the other 2 characters are Havoc, which again also makes sense because Havoc is the brother of Cyclops and the brother-in-law of Jean Grey. Also because Havoc has been a good guy for so many years in Marvel Comics. And then Psylocke. And this also makes sense because, again, Psylocke was an X-Men, been an X-Men for a long time, and she's also a good guy who's kind of forced to be on this team. Now, the other characters who were not invited were, of course, like Wild Child, Orphan Maker, and the Nanny. Now, of course, these characters are not going to stay behind. Like right now, they're like, okay, fine, we'll stay here and train. But of course, we all know they're kind of like teenagers. They're kind of like, it's not fair how you guys get to go to a big event, have fun, all that stuff, but we can't. And so basically, you kind of have the people who weren't invited kind of plotting to basically go to that party down the road while Mr. Sinister is not looking. And matter of fact, after like maybe 3 to 4 hours, you have Grey Crow tell the rest of the crew it's time to go. So basically you have Grey Crow, the Nanny, Orphan Maker, Wild Child. I just like that name, Wild Child. Either way though, you have our 4 characters, the ones who were not invited to the party, basically say they're going to go either way. So even though they were not invited, they're just going to go ahead and go. And the thing is, who is going to stop them? Because technically we have seen in this series so far, in this event, there's no, bouncer at the door taking in names or anything. People can walk in freely. And so right now you basically have the Hellions saying, hey, listen, we can go. Nobody knows if we were invited or not. So let's go ahead and head to that party. Now, of course, we do see the characters who were basically invited to the event kind of talking to different people about different things. So like Mr. Sinister is talking to Steve Rogers, of course, most likely probably about getting his DNA because it's Mr. Sinister. You do have Psylocke run into Betsy Braddock, aka Captain Britain, and you also have Havoc go to Charles Xavier. Now, Havoc is going to Charles Xavier for a special reason. The idea of bringing back Madeline Pryor, somebody that he really cares for and loves, and hoping that she can be brought back to life. But of course, that is the moment you have Charles say, hey, before I can tell you if we're going to bring her back to life or not, the rest of your team just arrived, and you have Havoc just instantly freak out. And so, of course, you do have the Hellions just walk in and everybody's kind of like, oh my God, the Hellions, they're here. The ones who were not invited, they're here. Can this day get any worse? Especially Havoc. He's like trying to walk away, hoping that they won't see him. But of course, they seen his outfit before he left for the event. And so when he tries to walk by, you have Grey Crow like, hey man, how's it going? You doing good, buddy? It's just hilarious to me and everything, especially when you have Mr. Sinister trying to talk to other people and try to put himself in the starlight, kind of like, oh my God, I'm amazing, I'm spectacular, all this. And then you have the nanny walk up and say some horrible things about him, where basically everybody else who was in that crowd talking to him or really listening to him just walks away because she ruined the moment. Like, this is why they weren't invited, because they're causing a lot of problems just being there in the first 2 or 3 minutes. Now, of course, you do have Grey Crow find Psylocke. And the reason why I say of course, because these two characters, they have been slowly beginning to like each other throughout this entire run. And of course, it's been small things here and there. And of course, Marvel does make it very obvious. But again, it's these two characters slowly getting together. And so you do have Grey Crow go over to Psylocke at the bar. Now, you do have Kid Omega walk up like, hey, y'all were not invited. I am going to kick you guys out. But you do have Psylocke say, no, they're with me. And if you try anything, I will tell your girlfriend Phoebe what you actually think about her dress. In other words, walk away, Kid Omega, walk away. Because remember, Kid Omega is part of the X-Force team, which of course was the security team for this entire event. Now, when it comes to a party, you're going to have some awkward moments. And that awkward moment comes when basically you have Wild Child walk into Aurora. Now, Aurora is a character we have been seeing in our X Factor coverage. Another team on COPPA that basically goes around and investigates different things that happen on the island, especially murder. Now, that being said though, Aurora was one of those X-Men characters that first appeared back in Chris Claremont days. I want to say it was X-Men number 120, and originally she was part of Alpha Flight, the Canadian superhero team. Now, at this point right here, of course, she's on COPPA with her brother as they both run the X Factor unit. Now, with that being said, reason why this is so awkward is because Wild Child and Aurora, they used to have a relationship. And of course, when things ended, that was the last time they saw each other. And so, of course, things are a tad bit awkward when she sees him at the party. Like, oh, Wild Child, you're here? This is awkward. But then we jump over to Havoc, and right now you have Havoc talking to Magneto. Now, this is Havoc basically talking to Magneto about the idea of bringing Madeline Pryor back to life, because Havoc does care for her so much and also misses her. Now, Magneto does give Havoc a hard time, especially when you have Polaris walk up and you have Magneto tell Polaris what Havoc was asking him. Now, the reason why it's so awkward awkward because Polaris and Havoc, they used to date. Like literally right after they joined the X-Men, those two characters got together. Now, of course, things did not work out. You had Havoc and Polaris both move on. But either way, though, it's kind of awkward when you have your father telling you that your ex-boyfriend is asking about another girl. Really awkward for both people. Good job, Magneto. But either way, though, you do have Polaris realize what her father is trying to do. And so you have Polaris take Havoc away so that they can actually talk. Now, things only get worse because you do have Wild Child go over to Grey Crow and Psylocke to only tell them what's wrong with him, that basically he ran into his ex. Now, of course, this is one of those moments where you have your best friend, your guy friend tell you, hey, go to her and show her how you changed, how you got better, that basically now you are a different man. And of course, you have Wild Child like, yeah, Grey Crow, you're right. I'm going to go over there and show her I'm a changed man. I'm a better man. Here I go. Now, while you have Wild Child doing that, two other things happen. You basically do have Psylocke kind of show Grey Crow that she's very intrigued by him and kind of wants to get closer to him, which we could actually possibly see down the road. But you didn't have Mr. Sinister be confronted by Exodus. And of course, this is Exodus just giving Sinister a message. Now, that message is that basically, apparently, Mr. Sinister had lost a friend. That's all we get to know, and the story does move on. Now, we do pick up with Havoc, and right now you have Polaris talking to Havoc. Now, remember, Havoc has been going around talking to Magneto and Charles Xavier about the idea of bringing Madeline Pryor back to life. Now, of course, the Quiet Council basically already had a meeting a while back, and they already said no. And so this is really Havoc more kind of begging and hoping to change their decision. But of course, it's kind of like, no, man, they're not going to do that for a lot of different reasons. And you have Polaris being that good friend to Havoc and trying to help him understand that basically they're not going to do that. There has to be a good reason why they're not trying to bring back Madeline Pryor. But of course, it's her saying maybe you should move on. Now, we do jump back over to Wild Child. And right now, you have Wild Child basically about to walk up to Aurora to hopefully get the girl back. The problem is, though, if you guys have not been following our coverage over X Factor, well, basically, Aurora is dating Daken. And so, of course, when you have Wild Child try to find Aurora, and when he does, of course, she's making out with Daken. And this right here just ticks Wild Child off, because you have to remember, when it comes to Wild Child, his mind is really animal-like. And of course, some animals, they do fight against each other for being the leader, but sometimes for a lady. And so this is Wild Child wanting to fight against Daken, thinking that if he wins against Daken, that basically he'll get Aurora back. But of course, you do have Grey Crow jump in. Now, of course, with Wild Child going crazy, and you also have Orphan Maker, I want to say he's drunk, and the nanny also kind of crazy, you do have Magneto and Magic having no choice but to kick out literally almost all the Hellions just to keep the party going, because Emma Frost wants this entire event to run smoothly. And so that means that basically, if you have some mutants causing drama right now, kick them out. And of course, the Hellions were kicked out. Now, of course, you do have the Hellions being able to actually arrive back to COPPA. And of course, they're very upset about the idea that basically they were kicked out of the party. Now, with that being said, though, of course, that is the moment we find out that they missed the big moment, the big event. And remember, at the end of the Hellfire Gala Part 1, basically Emma Frost showed the humans something very important and big, but of course it was at 1 o'clock. And so when the Hellions got kicked out, they literally just missed it. Again, it's Marvel teasing us kind of like, hey, the mutants did something big. We can't tell you what just yet. Keep reading the series and you might find out. But of course, again, the Hellions missed the big event. Now then they get word that apparently they're about to miss the fireworks. Now, of course, Psylocke was able to kind of connect her mind to somebody else who's still at the event to show the Hellions the fireworks. And of course, they're all excited. Now, Mr. Sinister arrives back home to Krakoa, very happy about to do something else that could most likely cause the X-Men problems down the road. But of course, he's just happy to be back home. But of course, when he does arrive, he does see his team kind of just staring into the sky, confused on why they're doing that for. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.